Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Performance Talk. My name is Yul Gordon. My partner is Chris Costa. I don't think he's going to make it in today. However, I am happy to say that he is on his way back, and everything will be as our longtime listeners are used to seeing it or hearing it. Our guest today is Danielle. Do you prefer Danny or Danielle?
Danny.
Okay, so our guest today is Danny Torossi. And Danny, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started.
Yeah, so my name's Danny. I am originally from Chicago, and I was always the injury-prone athlete in high school. So I spent many days and many hours before practice doing rehab. And I was lucky enough, so we had a sports medicine club at my high school. So once my fall season was done on swim team, I went ahead and I just joined. And I was there all 4 years. We had interns come in from North Park University, which is where I ended up going for undergrad. I got to know those professors pretty well. Some of the students that came and interned at the high school ended up being a professor for some of our classes, which is kind of cool. So we already had that relationship.
Okay, right.
And once I graduated, got my GA position at Eastern New Mexico University, which really, if I didn't go to Eastern for those 2 years, because it was rough. I mean, we had COVID, we had people kind of step out and leave in the middle of season. I don't think I would be where I'm at today if I didn't have to go through that and try to figure that out kind of on your own. And then I just left Eastern this past fall in October, and now I'm over at Allen University. Currently by myself.
So let's we're going to talk about both of those things, being the only person on staff of one, and then that well, I lost the word, but anyway, that turmoil you went through, when you first went off to school with COVID and how that was unique and all that. So you ended up in New Mexico, right?
Yes.
So you ended up in New Mexico from Chicago.
Yes.
So first of all, talk to our especially those who are right behind you coming out of school, dealing with that type of adversity, as a athletic trainer and what that kind of did for you.
Yeah, I mean, I know at the time when I was applying to graduate school, we had GA positions still open, and it was like fight to the death to try to even get a spot. So I ended up applying everywhere.
Gladiator. Yeah.
It was rough because I feel like there was more of us that were graduating then than there are now. But like you had to fight for a spot, and I think Eastern was my 6th or 7th school that I had talked to over the phone. And the head athletic trainer at the time gave me 24 hours to make my decision. So I went with it. I said yes. Went down there. And we were fully staffed. We had a staff of 5, so we probably could use a little bit more. We had 3 full-times and then 2 GAs, and I was one of the GAs. And just compared to now where you're seeing all these vacancies open and it's easier for a grad student coming out now to easily get into a job because they're everywhere and they could be as picky as they want because people need them. But they don't necessarily have to, apply to 20 different schools. They could probably send it out to maybe a couple, their top 3, and most likely get a job offer back.
So what do you think? Because I know for a time there, and we talk about on the show a lot, how, it's still, and I know for strength trainers, it's a little different, but it's still for athletic trainers, it's a position where you come in and you have to think seriously about, cost of living, and whether or not, your pay is going to equal quality lifestyle and be able to do the job and pay rent and pay school loans and do all that stuff. So did you have to go through any of that on the athletic training side? I know some of the fledgling or young strength trainers still go through some of that where they're working for free, basically.
Yeah, so as an athletic trainer, when you actually start breaking down your salary by hours, it's not looking too good. You get maybe like $3 or $4 an hour when you really
Right.
look at it at the end of the day. So my GA position, I wasn't lucky enough to go to a school where I got a stipend on top of
Right.
free tuition, on top of all the room and board. So I was making $426 every 2 weeks for 2 years, which it's rough. It's easier in New Mexico because expenses aren't as high as it is in Chicago or
Right.
anywhere else. It's a major city. We were kind of in the middle of dairy farms and slaughterhouses, and if you wanted to go to a store, you drove like 2.5 hours to Lubbock or an hour
Yeah.
to Amarillo. And I was really fortunate enough to have my parents kind of help me out my first year, just to try to get things like settled with rent and all that.
Figure out what your budget was.
Right. Yes. I mean, food stamps. I was on food stamps.
Yeah.
Like just having that alone, like you don't realize how expensive groceries are, even pre-COVID.
Right. Right.
That was helping me out a bunch. So, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I feel like there's a stigma with that too, and I don't think any like student or a young professional should feel ashamed of having to use a service like that because you need to like you
Well,
gotta eat.
in the first place, I think as a profession, in all the professions in performance, it seems like any profession in performance that is, I call us outside the mainstream. If you're not a medical doctor, or if you're not a a seasoned physical therapist, then you're in that bunch of, okay, I need to start work, but I know I'm going to make $12,000 a year. But the only way to do that is the only way in is through this funnel. So no, first of all, I think you're correct. You use everything you can use as a young person to get your foundation built. That doesn't mean you're going to be on it the rest of your life, and you're going to be, those kind of programs are there to help you. And I would say a smart move to try to use them and go ahead and get yourself started.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So,
I don't know what I would have done if I didn't. Um,
and that's what a lot of administrators and a lot of folks looking for GAs and first time hires need to take that into consideration. If you want an athletic trainer, if you want a strength coach or a nutritionist or whatever, you got to be able to support them, and you have to understand what you're getting early. So let's talk about that part. So this is your graduate assistantship, right?
mm-hmm.
So you walk in there, you're brand new, you're right out of your undergrad. Were you licensed at that time?
Yes, I was licensed.
Okay, so you have your license, and that's another expense you had to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your license, you went through that. Now talk to our listeners, and I know a lot of them are probably in that position now. Talk to them about how you deal with getting through that period.
Yeah. I like
Go ahead.
my head athletic trainer, so she ended up leaving. I think 2.5, 3 months into when I got there. And she had been there for like 12, 15 years previously.
Okay.
So going in, it was kind of chaotic, a little bit unorganized. I'm just trying to figure out like what systems we use for EMRs. Where's the boxes of tape? Where do I put the tape?
Where's the pre-wrap? I don't know where anything is.
So I'm trying to familiarize myself with the room. We had all of our supplies for the year come in, so putting them away, trying to figure out where everything is and what I actually had available to me to use. I would just like ask questions, ask all the questions in the world. There's no reason that you should be afraid to ask, even like, hey, where's this? Can I use this brace? What's this brace for? Like I've never seen this one before. Ask all the questions. They're not going to get mad at you. I know when I have my assistants, the newer ones came in after me at Eastern when I was the head, like I want you to ask me every single question. Like, I have no problem telling you anything or where something is or how we do something, because I don't want you to fail. I want you to succeed, and I want you to crash and burn. And at the time, I had a second job too in my first 3 months, kind of that period when my husband was there too. I should have listened to them back then and just stuck with the GA position and not try to do another job, because burnt out real quick.
Yeah, I bet.
I learned the hard way. But, building relationships with other staff members too in the department. So maybe not just sports med, but the strength coach and the AD and maybe the events operator, like getting to know them all too instead of staying in the little AT bubble really helps you out. If you have any other questions, they're there to help you. And you're kind of learning more of the like administration role and how that's playing into your job now, because, you never had to deal with admin as a student.
Right.
You just kind of hear about it, do a project, and then when you get to it in the real world, you get to it in the real world. But once our head left, we were a good group, and we all got along really well together. So we were all able to kind of lean on each other, bounce ideas back and forth, and kind of still have the program running or our department running, especially when COVID hit. Like, we had to.
Boy, that was a scramble for everyone, I think. And being a GA in that period, thinking about whether or not you want to do this job for any length of time, I'm sure brought about a whole bunch of questions. But you hit a situation where it's unique in the history of everything, basically. But it's also you get to a point where you come out of grad, not grad school, but you come out of your undergrad, and it's we all think we know everything and that we're ready when we come out of our undergrad. Then you get to your GA and you realize, wow, I don't know very much at all.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's COVID. Then you know nothing. So talk to the listeners about being an athletic trainer in that period when everything changes and you have to adapt.
Yeah. I still remember where I was when we got the news that, I guess the D1 basketball, they shut down. They finally stopped. So we were at a recovery place getting ready to play like our third round in conference, something like that. And the news just shows that whatever, I don't remember what school it was, but they're canceling it for COVID. And we all just stopped and are looking at the TV and we're like, well, what does this mean? Get a call from the commissioner, from the head coach. We're done. It's over. Go home. First they're like, okay, it's only going to be a week. And this lined up right around our spring break. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll just go home for a week for spring break. And I'm just going to come back. So I went back to Chicago for spring break. Got the call during spring break. Hey, you need to take all your stuff and leave. No one's allowed in the dorms. Everything's shut down. You got to go. Drove back to New Mexico, packed everything up, came back to Chicago. And I think we were in the dark for about a month and a half. And New Mexico was a lot strict than all the other states were with COVID. So that really took a toll on our teams too, because they weren't allowed to practice if they were in New Mexico. So we did our contact tracing, and we're trying to figure out how to, develop policies for COVID. Trying to do a check-in policy. So, and the guidelines were changing every other week.
Right.
The CDC would say something, the state would say something. You're calling Department of Health for New Mexico, trying to make sure that you're lining up with both entities. Department of Health was on speed dial for us. For New Mexico. We're calling them all the time. And, ordering all the masks, trying to figure out what company to order all the COVID tests from. What kit are we going to use to actually run the test results in? How does it work? How long does it take? Is this going to be quicker than the other ones? Are we just going to send them out? Are we going to do them in-house? So we all kind of work together to establish our policy for COVID. So masking, check-in, temperature. And I think we were ended up testing football 3 times a week, I want to say it was. Certain sports had maybe 1 test a week. I know football, I think, was 2 or 3 times a week. But we weren't allowed to actually have our kids practice in pods of 5 or 7 until I want to say almost 2021, spring of 21. And I know everybody in other states were already practicing in their little pods that summer for COVID.
Right.
That hit in February, March. So we thought we would be able to have our kids come back for their little fall camps back in, July, August. They weren't able to get on the field and practice in a group until I think the following April, May. So you got coaches yelling at you because of your policies and, don't want to get into politics. Right. Then everybody's doing their political aspect. We're like, we're just trying to follow the CDC so we can get these kids like we have to. Our hands are tied. We can't do anything about it.
So in that during that time, and this happens a lot with athletic trainers and strength coaches and people who are around the athletes all the time, you become a little bit of an information conduit for everything.
Yeah.
And I know because I coached some in the past and also because just the nature of the job, a lot of times you're the main conduit for things that you didn't go to school for.
Right.
You didn't go to school to build policy, but the athletic director comes to you for policy on, what do we have to do here? How long do we have to wait? How long do we have to do that? So I'm gonna jump around a little bit. As an athletic trainer, your job goes from basically let's drill it all the way down to dealing with injuries. During COVID, you had to deal with injuries a whole different way.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about being an athletic trainer when the situation changes and you're not with the athlete, but you're still responsible for the athlete.
Yeah, so we were doing, so we have like Microsoft OneDrive, so we were doing Teams meetings with our injured athletes who were practicing at home. And you have to do this virtual exam through a computer. So you're really diving into like all the tiny details that could possibly be an injury, and just using what you learned in school and kind of not common sense, but what you most commonly see with that type of sports would be that. Because you can't do special tests. You can't test a lot of ACL. You can't do allotments.
No.
And I think I had softball at the time, so a lot of upper extremity stuff. So I'm, hey, can you do one of these? Like, the wall, bring it all the way across. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And you're trying to walk them through, okay, can I kind of get you to do a special test without me having to do a special test?
Right.
And then you're really just throwing shots in the dark. Like you're, okay, well, maybe it could be 4, but I don't actually know. So at the time I was talking a lot with my preceptors, and my staff members, just, hey, this is what I have going on. Here's a list of their symptoms. Here's the special test I think we can do. Do you know how to do this virtually, or do you have any ideas of how to, make them do it at home? But it was hard. It was really hard. And then I had one case that was just bringing me in circles. Ended up being a neuromuscular vascular injury. So, I couldn't test any of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you determine that, on a computer screen?
Yeah, it's just really going back to, okay, textbook. What are they saying? Overhead athlete, it ended up being some form of a vascular, TOS, but then she had, a nerve pinch from cervical spine.
Yeah.
And that's hard to even start. You just have to narrow everything out, find something that could be, give yourself 2-3 options. And then I was literally just having her trying to. So much of
athletic trainer's job is touch and feel.
Hands on.
Yeah. It's hands on. And when you can't do a hands-on examination, you become basically a one-armed bandit. You lose a limb or you lose, let me restate that. You lose the ability to make a clear and concise, I don't want to call it a diagnosis because you're not necessarily, but because you're not a physician, but basically that's it. you don't know what to present the doctor with.
Yeah.
So talk to us about talking to those athletes who you think need to go see a doctor and that whole relationship, because the team doctor is no longer there, but you have someone you think needs, to move on to the next step. So if you go in, you do Lockman's and you do a whole bunch of stuff and you determine, okay, we probably have an ACL here. How do you then get them to the doctor?
So, a lot of times, if they already have an established relationship with an ortho back home, it's a lot easier because they can just, they're familiar. A lot of the times, though, we had kids with Medicaid and they're at home for COVID and they're not in state. So, me and my team physician at Eastern had a really, really good relationship, and he kind of knew people all over the place.
Right. Which helps.
Oh, very much so. I knew some surgeons from back home who also kind of knew people. So developing that relationship as a student when they're on your site, talk to those physicians because you might be working with them later on. So when we have the Medicare, I'm working with our secondary insurance, our team physician's office assistant to try to see what viable options there are in their state. I'm calling around, making sure that it could actually get approved for them to just be seen or to get an MRI, because we're not in our town where we already have a relationship established with their MRI tech where it's only $500 an MRI. And if they're Medicaid, it's not getting picked up, so now we're paying, $2-3 grand for this MRI. So where can we go that's actually going to give a high resolution image without breaking the bank? So it was hard, but we called around. A lot of the times, I guess some of the locations based on where they were, those physicians or doctors were already kind of used to those situations.
Right.
Because most of the time, if you're on Medicaid, you have to go back to the state you're from to get treatment. You can't do it in the state. So they're easy to work with. Just having a relationship with every party, insurance, doctor's office, surgeons, and getting us all on the same page together, and we're kind of that person who moves everybody in.
Did they cover all that in your undergrad?
No. I am an insurance connoisseur now. From my last 4 years, I always joke about it. I'm like, I'm just going to go into insurance sales for schools when I'm done because so much.
Look, the how much? Well, let's put it this way: how important is having those soft skills to your job today? Having gone through that, having learned all that stuff, how does that help you now, and how important is it for you in your job today?
With the with the insurance aspect, or just like
with all of it, just building those relationships. A lot of times, what happens is, the athletic trainer may have a relationship with the team doc, but that's about, that's really kind of the limit. So how important was gaining all that knowledge and having to work with multiple doctors and multiple agencies to get that care done. So how important is it for you today?
Oh, it's extremely important. I think that's one of the pieces I try to get my assistants to. I'll have them, if they have a big injury, I'll loop them into the process. So if I were to leave, or if they go somewhere and their head leaves, like, you have nobody to explain insurance to. You just got to figure it out yourself. It's incredibly valuable because you get to know those doctors very well. You get to establish that relationship with a new provider. Now you're bringing a new provider to the school, and maybe the school's getting some money, they're getting some money, everybody's happy. And then you have another specialist on hand. So when I actually moved to Columbia, one of my old doctors that we used, a surgeon in Texas, he's actually up in Myrtle Beach now. So if I have a case with a knee or a shoulder that's not getting work done, I send him up.
I'm going to help you out because I lived in Columbia for almost 20 years. It's over in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah. But, I'll shoot him a text. Hey, what do you think of this could you see him? Sure, send him up. Okay, cool. Even the relationships I'm building now, like I'm at a school where we don't really have a lot of relationships, and I feel like some of the bridges might have been burned in the past. So me trying to reach out to these entities again to try to get them to trust me, if I didn't do that at Eastern, I would not feel comfortable reaching out to these doctors here. Once you get the hang of it, you get the hang of it, and it's just like taping an ankle. But the very first one that you have to do, you're like, well, how do I talk to them? Especially I'm young. I'm 26. I look like I'm still an undergrad for the most part. So, and I'm a female, and I feel like it's harder for female ATs to try to get their foot in the door without, getting dismissed. You just kind of, if you're going in for a meeting, you have to be over the top business casual so they know you're serious. And you're not there to just waste their time. But I feel like it should be something that our undergrad programs kind of do. Like build a rapport with your team doctor, even at your undergrad. Get to know them, get to know people in the network. Because most of the time, if I stayed in Chicago, I would have a huge network of physicians I could, go to.
Right.
But not being afraid to take that step and actually start it, and that's the hard part. But you got to do it. You got to be thrown into the fire and figure it out once.
So let's go from New Mexico to the next step. How did that all come about, and why?
So I love my coworkers at my last institution. I just didn't feel like I had enough support from administration. And then we had a couple new people come in, and it was just riffraff, and I was kind of over it, the way my department was getting treated, the way my staff was getting treatment. So last May, I actually applied for the assistant position at South Carolina State University. Did their interview. We're trying to build a contract with the hospital. Never really heard back. And then in June, I guess my resume got out in Columbia. I don't know how, I don't know who, I don't know where. But the athletic director at my new institution called me. And was like, hey, we're looking for a head. Like, would you be interested coming down? And at the time, my partner was also applying for a new position. So I was like, okay, sure. Like, I'll just do it. Let's see what happens. Got offered the job. Ended up declining because his was a better opportunity.
Right.
And then things just got worse at my last institution. And I was, I love the kids. I love my coworkers. I know where he's at is better, but I can't do this. Like, I can't do this long term anymore. Right. So I called AD back, asked if he still needed me. Said, come on down. Came on down. I moved down a month later. So I think I resigned in September, and I started October 9th at the new school. Then it was the best decision I've ever made. The support from the administration here is fantastic. They fully back, and that's one of the things that's hard to find as an AT. It's hard to find an athletic director that's going to actually stand up for you and stick up for you when a coach kind of does some shady stuff, or if they're trying to run things their own way. So having that's really nice. I'm lucky too. All the coaches at my new school are fantastic. The kids are great. It's just overall
one of the hardest things as a new employee, especially if you're coming in to run something, is to leave what happened in the past behind you. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's you don't expect it to be like it was, good or bad, at the previous stop, because it's always going to be different.
Yep.
If that makes sense. It's always going to be different. Now, I'm familiar with Allen and across the street, Benedict, and downtown, South Carolina, and coastal and South Carolina State. I through the years, I had the opportunity to do some work with them, each school at a different time. But what I found most important in most athletic departments was the willingness to be part of the team when you walk in. And then when you walk in, and you can quickly find out what the team is. Stay away from the negative stuff. Embrace the positive stuff, even if it's not something you would embrace. If it's positive, you can there can still be good come out of that. So that's as a guy that's been in and around athletics, athletic training, strength and conditioning, and all that stuff for 100,000 years. That's the one thing I can tell you. There's always going to be that, I don't want to call it worry, but that feeling out process. Hey, do I belong here? If you get somewhere and you don't know if you really belong, how do I fit in? That's the next question. Okay, so now you're in Columbia. You took this job. You're the head athletic trainer, and you walk in. And don't know if they told you this before you got hired or you didn't find out till after you got hired. But you are the staff. You are the athletic training staff. What's your first move?
Just trying to get my feet under me and assess what I got going on. I was told that we had one AT, and she was kind of part-time, and in the long run, schedules just weren't matching up, so she left. And I mean, it's job hunting all over again, and it sucks because there's so many open positions, and like I said before, the new graduates can be a lot more picky with where they want to go because there's so many open, and a lot of them are offering like a $10,000 stipend on top or a signing bonus. I'm still trying to find an assistant, and it's been close. Well, it'll be a year in October, but we're in June, so we're kind of getting there. And it's hard when you come into a place where it was kind of a revolving door, because I think that's really the only issue really with me trying to get somebody to get hired. Because I mean, the school's great, the support's great, the coaches are great, the kids are great, salary's good coming out of your undergrad or your master's program. It's just I don't think there's anybody there long term to make somebody want to stay, because I think every AT now is scared to be left alone, because it's a very likely possibility that you'll get hired at any place and somebody's going to, you leave, and then you're stuck by yourself. And a lot of the new graduates they don't want that. I wouldn't want that. Nobody really wants that. But it's hard to convince people that you're going to stay. You're not going to up and leave. So I don't know. I'm getting really scared. I might be by myself again this year. But I've been hiring like PRN workers from the hospitals, trying to develop a relationship with Prisma to send people out to. Right now we work with Cora, so I have a physical therapist who comes out once a week to do the PT on the kids so I can catch up on paperwork. One of the other things I'm trying to look into if I can't get help is Stretch Lab down the road.
Yep.
So in between New Mexico and Columbia, I went New Mexico to Massachusetts back to New Mexico to finish my second master's. And I worked for a company called Body Squad, and it's very similar to Stretch Lab. So I kind of know what they provide, what they can do. So I've reached out to them, try to see if we can establish some sort of relationship contract where maybe a couple of their guys come out over to me once a week for a certain number of hours just to do all the stretching and the myofascial release that I don't have time to give the students. It's only one person, and if there's a line of 10 of them,
that's hours in a week. That what I think of a lot of smaller schools like Allen, and some of their administration don't understand is that, it's a full-time job just to run, not to do everything in an athletic training room, but just to run it administratively.
Yeah.
It's a full-time job. Now, if you're doing all the examinations, all the taping, all the rehab, all of the administrative work, we're talking about 3 people, 4 people already. Yeah. And that's not something that is understood. A lot of times it's budget driven. And one of the things that I know in some other small schools and HBCUs around is what they do is they try to build a structure. Is there an athletic training program academically at Allen? I don't know.
No, there's not.
Because if that was the case, then there's a resource.
Yeah, so I'm actually trying to set up with USC as being a clinical rotation site. So maybe I could get some students coming in just to help me out.
It's a good idea.
I have one that might possibly work out. I still have to meet with them, but we are talking about the possibility of having her come out for the winter spring season, which would help so much.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I think we only really need 3 or 4 people at Allen, and I mean that'll be smooth sailing running. Like if you have 4 people, you could have 2 people work a morning shift, 2 work a night shift. You don't have to stay there the whole day. There's no need to.
Right.
So that's how I'm kind of trying to advertise it, especially if I get a second one. I'm like, hey, you could split it up mornings, nights. And if you put that with your salary, it's kind of working out really nicely for you because you're now working 40 plus hours a week. Maybe you're working, well, you work 40, maybe not 120 hours a week.
Right.
And that's still
I've
compared to your salary.
I've substituted long term a couple of times for some athletic trainers, and when I had my license, and that was you're talking about doing anywhere between 60 and 80 hours, and I was just helping out. You know what I mean? And substituting because the head guy or woman was gone. That's when I had so many other things going on that it was easy for me to say, okay, I got to let something go, and that was the athletic training workload was one of them. But I didn't lose touch with what athletic training is all about and what you do and all that stuff. But one of the things I did realize when I did step back away from it was I got some time.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I didn't because I spent so much time around athletes, either in the strength world or in the private sector or in athletic training, that I was always around athletes, so I didn't I could be doing 2 jobs at once sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But you mentioned burnout, a few minutes ago, and that comes quickly when you have to do that or when you get into that, even accidentally, which is what I did. I didn't have to do it, but I just took it all on, and I was like, wow, man, I need a break. But I was lucky enough that I was in a situation where I could take a break where contractually you really can't. You can, but you can't. And it's really up to your administration at that point. But you're signed on to do certain things, and then when you realize that that's 3 full-time jobs, mm-hmm. That's when a lot of people lose heart. I'm saying don't lose heart because it does get better.
Oh, yeah.
It'll get better, but the biggest thing is if you have a purpose and you feel like you have a purpose there, then you'll be okay. As soon as you lose purpose, that's when it gets kind of like, what am I doing? I've been here 19 hours already. I don't see that, but that's the old guy in me. I'm always throwing out tidbits of advice for no reason. For no reason, but there are those of us out here who know what that load is and how that really affects your ability to function at a high level. So let's talk about, man, when's I'm trying to think, how old I know Allen dropped their football program for a while. When did they pick it back up? I can't remember.
I want to say it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago where they picked it back up.
Yeah, I had already gone. I'm in Texas now, so okay. So 17 or 18.
I want to say that's when Coach Keaton came in. And I want to say he was there for maybe 4 to 5 years. I think that's around the right time.
But how many sports are you responsible for now at Allen? Do you know?
11.
11 sports.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about a good 300 athletes?
Somewhere around there, 300 to 350.
Yeah, so 300 athletes, one person. If if anybody from Alan and the administration sees or listens to this podcast, get her some help. That's coming from me. Get her some help, because you don't want to lose a good hire because they burn out. Mm-hmm. And it won't be because you're trying to burn out. It'll be because of the circumstances. So, but it sounds like you're in a good situation, and Alan has grown since I've been there. And I know there's been a lot of changes there. So let's talk about being just dropping everything, being an athletic trainer. What does that mean for you?
For me, it means being there to kind of help when nobody else is available, or nobody else really sees it. Because, there's the physical, there's the rehab, but then there's also that mental side. Right. And I feel like athletic trainers kind of wear multiple hats for these athletes, and, they're not really comfortable talking about it with a lot of people because, they're not familiar with them. I know I have open door policy. I'll have kids come in all the time and just vent for like a half hour for an hour. So for me, being able to provide them a safe space and trust, and to kind of heal them and get them better in multiple aspects, like I'm good with that. Like as long as I'm there for them in any aspect of their athletic career, like that's my goal. I just want to be there, be present, be a listening ear, help them out, talk them through their injury, talk them through, okay, coach probably doesn't hate you, but, maybe you're slacking one day, like, come on, pick it up, get in high gear.
Yeah.
But I just love being that person for them. Their little cheerleader on the sideline, their whole athletic career.
I think what a lot of athletes need to realize is strength coach, athletic trainer, nutritionist, everybody is focused on you. That's what athletes need to know. A lot of times they don't realize that, but they also need to know that sometimes if I'm focused on you and I'm the strength coach, I need to send you to Dani, because I'm outside of my ability to help you with what you're talking about. So I'm going to suggest to you to go to Dani. Dani's going to suggest to you to come to me when there's a strength issue or a conditioning issue. And with all of that said, do you guys have relationships, or are you trying to build relationships with sports nutritionists, psychologists? I heard you talk about physical therapists a little bit, but those other pieces that are important to helping the athlete, and sometimes are not your professional bailiwick, so to speak, but you recognize when there's a referral needed.
Yeah. So our strength coach right now, he is working on getting his nutrition certification. Just because, there's two of us, and obviously, a little bit about nutrition, but like you said, we don't specialize in it. That's not our wheelhouse.
Right. Even if you get your certification in it, it's still another full-time job.
Yeah.
And you may learn a lot, and you may be able to do a lot, but it's not like it helps fill the void, but it doesn't fill the void, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I know he's trying to work on that just so he can be more of a guy, just because I know he's got a lot on his plate, because he's also the only strength coach working with all the teams as well. Right. And I got a lot on my plate, but him picking it up, I feel the kids listen better because they're, doing weights and then nutrition, and they know the two go hand in hand. It's hard to try to convince a kid to eat well so their injury recovers faster, because they can't really see that image.
Making that connection.
Right.
So what you eat is how fast you heal.
Yes.
They don't always get that.
So they're easy. I feel like it's easy for them to visualize it in the weight room, because it's everywhere. Everybody talks about that. And I believe we're trying to build, I think he's built a protein bar, something like that, where we're going to be getting protein shakes for the kids to kind of fill in that gap for them and just kind of push them in that nutrition order. Mental health wise, I believe, I'm not too sure. and I feel like this was like this at my other institution too. It's just the school has their counselors and stuff set up already.
Right.
So I think it's hard for them to understand the need for a sports psychologist and not just
Yeah.
a general.
If I said this to any any smaller institution, I would say to them, you can get a full-time counselor / psychologist / whatever. That person can already be on your staff.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're not familiar with sport, they have no experience in sport, you can't just apply that, counseling for whatever it may be. You cannot just apply that to sport and make it a one size fit all. You'll do more. It's like a physical therapist that's not a licensed athletic trainer.
Yeah.
Trying to be an athletic trainer, meaning that you do know something and your credentials are legit, but if you have no background in sport or competition, then you're really completely lost, and it's hard to apply, general diagnosis to sport.
Right.
So, I would say for the school, and I'm just throwing it out there, get somebody certified in sports psychology. And it can be somebody you already have on staff. Just, pay for them to go through the course, get the certification, learn the learning. That's a statement I made up. So that doesn't depict my doctorate degree when I say learn the learning. So but it does say that you do know that you cannot, just because I'm an MD doesn't mean I can do orthopedic surgery.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're still smart, you're still intelligent, you're still a professional, but your credentials don't match up to the need.
Yeah.
So
100%.
There it again is my old man advice thing again. So don't mind me.
No,
our listeners are used to me throwing in tidbits of kind of useful, useless information, if that makes sense. So you come in, you're working on basically building an athletic training program from scratch. We've alluded to talking about working with other entities at the athletic director, which is kind of, they have a whole different mission than what you have. Mm-hmm. They have a whole different mission than the strength and conditioning coach. And then the strength and conditioning coach and athletic trainer have, different missions than the sport coach. So how do you work together as one within the profession of performance? So strength coach, nutritionist, therapist, all those folks, and then wider with the coaches, athletic directors, and other officials.
Yeah. It's all really, in my experience, at least, because I've had some football coaches, are very stuck in their ways.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then you have the ones that are a little bit more accepting, I guess, of
progressive.
Yeah. So it's really about just getting them to trust me, and if I can give a little blurb in 3 minutes to answer their question, and they can actually sit and think on it. It kind of opens them up more to the idea and kind of how I treat as an athletic trainer compared to maybe what they're used to in the past. Maybe they've had a horrible experience.
Right.
And I'm trying to break that for them. So a lot of it too is, establishing that relationship with the kids too. So if I'm treating the kids and, they're improving, coach sees they're improving, maybe the kid's saying, yeah, I went to Dani today and I did this, and now I can do this. I can sprint over here, or now I can cut, where she worked on my hamstring mobility and now I can, do whatever. Getting the kids, because me and the strength coach are on the same page. It's the best. It's fantastic. Yeah. I feel like I find a strength.
Who is that? You can give him a shout out.
Carlson Clark, Coach Clark.
Okay. Okay.
We are same brain, same wavelength, same thought process. Um, he's actually been the main reason why a lot of these kids haven't been injured since I got there, because he had to pick up the slack because there was no athletic trainer.
Yeah, that's
And
tough.
I don't know if the coaches or the kids realize that, but I'm always telling them, like, you need to thank him, because without him, you'd be seeing me way more often.
Yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship between athletic trainer and strength coach,
Mm-hmm.
and it's great. I'm not good, not okay, not acceptable, not any of that stuff. It's great that you have the relationship you have with him, because a lot of times there's friction between those two entities,
Mm-hmm.
and that almost always ends in failure
Yep.
when there's friction, because it's so important, especially for a return to play, for the athletic trainer to understand when to pass off to the strength coach and vice versa. When the strength coach sees something that that's that doesn't look right, doesn't smell right, doesn't seem right, to pass it back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason the reason I brought up the psychologist question is because sometimes passing it back and forth between you guys is not where the break is. The break is here. The break is in. And for those of you who are just listening and not watching, I pointed to my head. But the break is in the psychological factor, and that's when a sports psychologist can really help. Not a counselor, a sports psychologist. It's different. And I, for my sports psychologist friends out there, and for everybody, a mindset coach is not always your sports psychologist. Those are kind of two different guys. Your mindset is how you approach the sport and how you approach preparation and all those kind of things. Psychologists do some of that, but they are also adept at getting to what the issue might be in sport. And when it rolls over into a mental health thing, they should refer to the clinical psychologist if they're not one. Because sometimes a sports psychologist is a clinical psychologist. So, and they can be, and that's two jobs you can do together because they're symbiotic and very similar. So, anyway, what was I talking about? Who knows?
The relationship with coaches.
Yeah,
But I feel like, me and Coach Clark having that relationship, and the kids see that, and they know we like can trust one another, makes the
right,
kids buy in more, which in turn makes the performance better. And now the coaches are starting to buy in because they're seeing both
right.
people working together. And then, I won't have a coach popping into my office like every couple hours asking me about something. I'm able to just send them a sheet, tell them what's up, and a scheduling app too. And I think just building more of that trust. So, holding the kids accountable. I can mark when they're late, I can mark when they're no show, and I can mark when they're complete.
Yeah, I mean, um, one of my favorite statements to make to coaches back when I was really active with strength conditioning more than athletic training is when I did this. But when I was really active with teams and stuff like that, I would say, okay, coach, we had 12 strength sessions scheduled for the month of, let's say, July. Little Johnny only made 4 of them. And while he may be your best defensive back, the reason he hasn't shown improvement
Yeah.
is right here. And that's something a coach then understands. Hey, you only made 12 sessions. I mean, you only made 4 out of 12 sessions. You couldn't even do half of them. And 40% is failing no matter what. The only sport that 40% will get you into the Hall of Fame is in baseball. If you bat 400, you're doing great. You're doing great. Any other sport, 40%, that's not going to get you there. So, well, what else do I want to ask you? I could ask you a whole bunch of other things, but we have ran up on an hour, and that happened really fast. So, well, I'm going to ask you something else anyway.
Okay.
If you had to give advice to someone following you, what would it be? It's a 2-part question. And if you had to give advice to someone ahead of you, maybe in a leadership position, what would that be? Go.
Somebody following you. I think know your value, know your worth, and advocate for yourself. For the one following me.
That's great.
Because nobody else, if there's only one of you in a department, you know who's going to stick up for you. You have to, vouch for yourself. Take the time to collect data, show data. A lot of these EMRs now have, you can see the dollar sign of the treatment that you're providing in-house. So, hey, this is how much we would have spent if we sent them out if I wasn't here. So maybe take that, extra $5,000 that's sitting on the side and throw it my way because I just saved you $40,000 for the whole year. I always tell them, advocate for yourself, know your worth. If you're not valued, there is going to be another place that's going to value you way more than where you're at right now.
Yeah, and to do that, that is great advice. And to do that without being arrogant or braggadocious, be able to know what you're good at and how you bring value. Not just knowing your value, but how you bring value, just like you explained. But also be honest enough with yourself to say, "Hey, look, this is where I need some work, and if I get some more time, I'll get better at this. But right now, I can't spend time on getting better at this, and maybe you noticed that I can't spend time on getting better at my paperwork,
right?
Because I don't have time." So be able to articulate those kind of things. So if you have more time, you're telling me your paperwork will get better. So it's not about the paperwork, because that's usually the next statement. It's not about the paperwork. No, it's not about the paperwork, but it's about communicating to you what has been done and how it's better and why it's better. Because then once you do that, now it's an understanding. You put the value in the paperwork. If you can have the requirement for multiple reports, but if you don't have time to do them, they're going to be rudimentary.
Yep.
And I'm okay with rudimentary if time's an issue. Just give me the nuts and bolts. But I like detail. If you have a 4-person staff, you got to be able to manage time well enough to get the paperwork in some kind of detail. All right. So old guys like me or someone who's ahead of you, what would you like them to keep front of mind?
Maybe don't feel self-conscious, or don't be afraid to not be the smartest one in the room, even though you're in charge. Continue to seek conferences or like maybe leadership development, or another area of expertise that you're not really confident in. Because we all have those. We all have an area of improvement, and just because you're in charge and you've been doing it for a long time doesn't mean that you don't have an area to also improve in. And I think communicating that with like AD or higher ups, like, hey, I do want to learn this. Can we find more conferences for this? That's a return on investment for them. So if you're investing in yourself, don't be afraid to do that to continue to grow more, even though you might be, sedentary or happy where you're at.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. I would add to that by saying, remember, things change. So the people behind you may know something that you don't know, or they may be more familiar with something that you're not, or they may be more, God forbid that an old guy say that someone like you has more experience, someone who's only been at it for 5 years, 6 years?
Mm-hmm.
6 years has more experience at a certain thing than someone who's been at it for 15 or 20 years. Because what happens to us that have been at this longer than 10 years is we start to, 1, forget, 2, we don't get some of the things that you're getting, some of the new advances, some of the new techniques, some of everything that you're getting when you come through. So there's goes back to, I would say, knowing the value of the people that work for you or that are behind you. I used to use the term below, but I don't like that. Oh. They're just behind you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean they're not smart, they're not intelligent, they're not whatever, because if you're going to be the leader, you also have to learn how to, put yourself in their position and go, okay, what are they doing that I don't know about that I'm just, pushing off because I don't know it or ignoring or whatever. All right, Dani, been great. I have to go or the production people are going to get mad at me for running well over an hour, but I can talk about this stuff a lot. I am very familiar with Columbia and surrounding areas, and I've been at this in the strength game for a long time. I didn't. I say I spent enough time in athletic training. I think it's probably over 20 years. But I'm not as versed in stuff that's after 2014 or 15. So, but as far as building teams and working with people and all that stuff, you can put me down as a contact. I know a few people, just a couple of people, but it's been great having you on. Glad you kind of joined us here on the kind of really fast because we schedule out quite a ways, but I stuck you in here because I wanted to get you on because I thought you had a unique experience becoming a head athletic trainer at the college level, and then becoming a head athletic trainer as a female, and then walking into a situation which is full of opportunity that you have to build. You get a chance to build from kind of the ground up athletic training program, or what I like to call a performance department.
Yes.
Okay, because I think athletic training, strength conditioning, psychology, all of it fits together, and it's all about performance and it's all about the athlete. So thank you for accepting our invitation.
Yeah, of course.
And coming on to talk to us today.
Thank you for having me.
And ladies and gentlemen, this has been Performance Talk. We have been talking with Dani Torossi. I'm going to mess it up already. Torossi. So no disrespect intended, but thank you for being with us. And ladies and gentlemen, we are out.